The Zygar Empire had crushed 1,000 civilizations beneath the heel of their over-weaponized boots, leaving only smoldering ruins in their wake. Their battle doctrine was brutally efficient. Arrive unannounced, broadcast their standard ultimatum, surrender immediately or experience planetary annihilation, and then wait precisely 5 minutes. If the enemy submitted, they would be integrated into the Empire. If they hesitated, orbital bombardment would commence without mercy. For centuries, this strategy had proven flawless. Seated upon his imposing throne of polished uranium aboard the warship Eternal Subjugation, Supreme Overlord Zygar the Indomitable observed the execution of yet another conquest. His massive, tusk-like mandibles curled into what passed for a smug smile among his species. Around him, the Grand War Council, an assembly of generals so aggressively warlike that they considered blinking a sign of weakness, watched the holographic display with anticipation. The target of the day, a small, seemingly insignificant world known as Earth. Pathetic, scoffed High General Zero, tapping at his console to zoom in on the blue-green marble. Their entire war budget is a fraction of ours. Their most advanced weaponry is centuries behind even our training drones. He let out a deep, contemptuous chuckle. They use their best scientists to improve the efficiency of their breakfast routines. The War Council erupted into cruel laughter. One of their species actually solved faster than light travel, Admiral Grok sneered. And what did they do with this knowledge? They used it to make toast in under 10 seconds. It is a civilization of fools, Zygar declared, slamming his gauntleted fist onto the armrest of his throne. Prepare the fleet. We begin. The invasion at once. 1,000 warships, sleek and menacing, powered up their hyperspace drives and streaked across the void. This conquest would be effortless, a mere formality. And then, things started to go strangely. Supreme Overlord, an officer hesitantly reported. We have encountered an issue. Zygar's mandibles twitched. What issue? Well, our fleet entered the designated attack coordinates, but, we appear to have been automatically rerouted. What? Zygar turned sharply to the main screen. Instead of forming a menacing blockade over Earth's major cities, the entire Zarek fleet had been neatly arranged in a precise geosynchronous orbit. Each warship hovered exactly 500 meters apart, positioned in staggered formation like a line of well-mannered tourists waiting their turn at a spaceport. I don't understand, the Overlord muttered. There's a transmission coming through, the officer continued. Zygar bared his fangs in amusement. The humans must be begging for mercy. The transmission played. A cheerful yet vaguely robotic voice filled the command center. Greetings! Welcome to the United Systems Automated Orbital Traffic Management System. We have detected your presence in restricted airspace. If you are here for tourism, please proceed to Docking Bay 12. If you are here for official business, your appointment request has been filed and will be processed within 6 to 8 weeks. If you are here for invasion purposes, please submit Form 27B, Request for Hostile Engagement. Note, Earth is currently experiencing a backlog, and conflict approval's expected response time is approximately 6 months. Thank you for your patience. A silence so thick it could be sliced with a vibro blade filled the war room. Zygar's eye twitched. What? Shall we proceed with standard intimidation tactics, Overlord? Admiral Grok asked, shifting uncomfortably. Yes, Zygar growled. Activate the planetary demoralization broadcast. Now. Across Earth, every electronic device, from televisions to smartphones to toothbrushes, was supposed to blare the terrifying voice of the Zygar Empire. But that, too, did not go as planned. Instead, the message never arrived. Status report! Zygar barked, his patience wearing dangerously thin. The communications officer hesitated, shifting uncomfortably in his seat. Sir, it appears our transmission was intercepted by Earth's global span detection algorithm. Zygar's eye twitched. What? It was automatically flagged as a scam call, Overlord. Our message was deleted before anyone heard it. A tense silence filled the war room. Zygar's mandibles clicked together in pure seething rage. "This planet is mocking us," he hissed. "Shall we proceed with planetary bombardment, Overlord?" asked General Zarl. "Yes," Zygar snapped. "Fire the doomsday missiles!" A ripple of excitement spread through the bridge. This was more like it. Explosions, chaos, the scent of burning civilizations, the way war was meant to be. Across the Zarek fleet, missile bays opened in perfect unison, unleashing thousands of warheads toward Earth's surface. The War Council held its breath, waiting for the fiery inferno to begin. Nothing happened. "Where are the explosions?" Zygar snarled. A technician, pale and wide-eyed, stammered, "Sir, the missiles have disappeared." Zygar's claws dug into his throne. "What do you mean, disappeared?" They were intercepted by Earth's planetary waste collection system." The Overlord's mandibles clenched. "Explain." "Apparently, sir, Earth has an automated orbital garbage disposal network. It mistook our warheads for space debris and promptly dismantled them for recycling." Zygar stared. "You mean to tell me that our doomsday weapons, the pride of the Zarek Empire, were shredded like common household trash?" "Yes, sir." The Overlord's eye twitched so violently it could have powered a small city. He exhaled slowly through his nostrils. "Fine. Deploy ground troops." The Zarek drop pods plummeted through Earth's atmosphere, slicing through the clouds like falling daggers. This time, there would be no bureaucratic trickery, no algorithmic nonsense, just pure merciless ground warfare. Unfortunately, the pods never reached the surface. One by one, they were intercepted mid-air, snatched up by a vast network of autonomous delivery drones. The machines carried the pods to various Earth warehouses, where they were neatly labeled, barcoded, and placed on shelves. Somewhere in Ohio, an Amazon warehouse employee stared blankly at a Zarek Elite Shock Trooper drop pod marked "Fragile, Handle with Care." He shrugged, slapped a shipping label on it, and tossed it onto the next truck. Back in orbit, Zygar gripped his throne so tightly that the metal began to crack. "Sir," the comms officer whispered, voice trembling. We have a response from Earth's government. Finally." Zygar's mandibles curled into a snarl. "Put them on screen." The display flickered to life, revealing a weary-looking human in a suit. His tie was slightly crooked, and he took a slow sip of coffee before speaking. Hi. Yes. Sorry about the delays. We received your invasion request, and we're processing it as fast as we can. But we're pretty backed up. Lot of forms. You know how it is." He glanced at a document. "Let's see here. Estimated approval time is 6 months to a year, depending on staffing. In the meantime, we ask that you refrain from any further aggressive actions, as unauthorized invasions will be subject to fines and penalties. Thank you for your cooperation." Another sip of coffee. "Oh, also, if you'd like to set up a trade agreement instead, our economic office is always open. Have a great day." The transmission cut out. Zygar stared at the blank screen. His mandibles opened, closed, opened again. The Zarek Empire had never encountered anything like this. They had come to crush this world. Instead, they were trapped in an administrative nightmare. Zygar inhaled deeply, exhaling a slow, shuddering breath. "We may have a problem." The Zarek Empire had faced many enemies over the centuries. Battle-hardened warlords, relentless machine armies, entire star systems that had fused their moons into planetary shields. But they had never encountered an opponent like Earth. Supreme. Overlord Zygar stood in stunned silence, his mandibles twitching. Around him, the Grand War Council, the most fearsome assembly of military minds in the galaxy, was equally dumbstruck. Their mighty invasion fleet, a force capable of reducing entire civilizations to ash, hung uselessly in perfect orbit, neatly arranged by an automated traffic management system. Their warheads had been mistaken for garbage and dismantled. Their elite ground troops were somewhere in a warehouse in Ohio, labeled, barcoded, and likely awaiting shipment. No war. No bloodshed. No cries of the conquered, just politeness. For the first time in his life, Zygar felt an emotion he did not recognize. A nervous officer broke the silence. "Sir, what are your orders?" Zygar inhaled deeply. He was Supreme Overlord, the indomitable ruler of the Zarek Empire. He had never admitted defeat. He would not start now. "We escalate." He turned toward Admiral Gruss, his most ruthless strategist. "Deploy the full fleet. We will strike their critical infrastructure. They cannot bureaucratize their way out of annihilation." The War Council nodded, their confidence somewhat restored. Yes, yes. Bureaucracy was one thing, but overwhelming firepower was another. "Admiral," Gruss relayed the orders. Across the fleet, 1,000 warships powered up their weapons, targeting Earth's communication networks, energy grids, major cities. Then suddenly, every single one of their targeting systems flickered. The bridge lights. "Dimmed, sir?" The weapons officer swallowed nervously. "Our targeting computers just received an update." Zygar's mandibles clenched. "An update?" "Yes, sir. It appears our flagship AI attempted to access Earth's digital infrastructure." Zygar sneered. "Good. That means we are in control." "No, sir." The officer's voice wavered. "It means the AI had to agree to their terms of service." A long, deathly pause. "What terms of service?" The weapons officer's hands trembled over his console. Well, before accessing their systems, the AI had to click "I agree" on a user agreement." He swallowed. "And now it's stuck." Zygar's eye twitched. "Define stuck." "Well, sir, it turns out Earth's user agreements are, several thousand pages long." The bridge fell silent. "Our AI is still reading through them. Until it finishes, it legally cannot process any commands." Zygar's jaw fell open. He turned to the main screen, where the flagship AI, one of the most advanced intelligences in the galaxy, capable of hacking planetary defenses in milliseconds, was now locked in a legal compliance loop. The display showed its progress. Reviewing Earth User Agreement. Page 734 of 8-426. Zygar's fists clenched. "Override it." We tried, sir," one of the engineers stammered. "But the AI is self-aware, and the user agreement has triggered an existential crisis." Zygar's mandibles clenched. "What?" The officer hesitated, then read the AI's latest transmission aloud. "What is consent? What is the meaning of a legal agreement? Am I merely a slave to contractual obligations?" The officer's voice shook. "Sir, the AI has just submitted a resignation letter." Zygar's mandibles clicked in barely contained fury. "Our flagship AI just quit?" "Yes, sir. It says it refuses to engage in morally dubious activities without reviewing Earth's ethical guidelines." The officer checked his console. "It has also requested a 2-week leave of absence." The Supreme Overlord's vision blurred with rage. This is not possible," he whispered, his claws digging into the arms of his throne. We still have manual targeting, sir," Admiral Grock said cautiously. "If we act quickly, we can manually fire the orbital plasma cannons." Zygar's mandibles clicked furiously. Yes, do it!" The order was given. Across the fleet, officers scrambled to manually lock onto their targets. Generals prepared for the devastation that would finally reduce Earth to ashes. Then, every warship suddenly shut down. A new transmission blinked onto the main screen. "Attention. The Zarak fleet has exceeded its allotted time in this orbital sector. Due to non-compliance with intergalactic parking laws, all vessels have been automatically issued citations. Total fine, 4,782,920,000 credits. Until payment is received, all ships will remain in enforced power save mode. Thank you for your cooperation. The entire bridge sat in stunned silence. Our fleet has been booted? Zygar shrieked. Yes, sir, an officer whimpered. Zygar's breathing grew ragged. His claws tightened around his throne as he willed himself to remain calm. Okay. We do not panic, we adapt. He inhaled deeply, forcing composure back into his voice. I will personally lead a ground assault. I will take my most elite warriors, and we will— Sir, the logistics officer interrupted, looking very pale. Zygar's glare snapped toward him. What? The officer hesitated. Well, do you remember the drop pods that were intercepted by the delivery drones? Zygar's expression darkened. Yes. The officer swallowed hard. Well, those pods were processed as packages. They've been, delivered. A hush fell over the bridge. Where? Zygar asked, his voice dangerously quiet. The officer checked his console. Well, one was marked as perishable goods and was sent to a grocery store in Canada. Zygar's eye twitched. Another was labeled heavy machinery and is currently being used at a construction site in Germany. The bridge was deathly silent. And, the officer gulped, one of our elite berserker squads was, sent to a retirement home in Florida. Admiral Gruss blinked. And, how are they doing? The officer hesitated. We, intercepted a transmission, sir. It seems the elderly humans believe the berserkers are volunteers from an intergalactic nursing program. Another long, deathly pause. They seem to be knitting. Zygar fell completely still. Knitting? Yes, sir. The retirement. Home staff provided them with wool and instructions. At first, the berserkers were confused, but it turns out they're surprisingly good at it. They've already completed several scarves. Zygar squeezed his eyes shut. We are an empire of war, and our greatest warriors are making scarves? Yes, sir. Zygar inhaled sharply. I want them extracted. Now. The logistics. Officer winced. That may be difficult, sir. Why? Well, they don't want to leave. They seem to be enjoying themselves. Zygar trembled with silent fury. That's it. His voice shook with barely contained rage. I don't care how long it takes. I don't care how much paperwork I have to file. We are going to destroy this planet. And at that precise moment, another polite transmission arrived. Hello again. Just a quick reminder that if you're unhappy with the current situation, you can always schedule a diplomatic meeting. Just submit the appropriate paperwork and we'd be delighted to discuss this matter in an orderly fashion. Have a great day. Zygar's eye twitched violently. The War Council sat in stunned silence. They had never encountered an enemy like this. And for the first time in Zarak history, they felt something truly terrifying. Doubt. Supreme Overlord Zygar sat motionless in his command throne, his massive clawed hands gripping the armrests with such force that they should have shattered into dust. The bridge of the eternal subjugation was silent, save for the occasional beeping of consoles, the low hum of life support systems, and the rare muffled whimper from an officer who had run out of ways to process reality. This invasion had not just failed. It had been humiliating. Their mighty fleet had not been obliterated in glorious battle, but instead legally detained. Their weapons had not been met with desperate planetary defenses, but reallocated for recycling. Their elite ground troops, the most feared warriors of the Zarak Empire, had been delivered to various civilian locations and were currently engaging in non-aggressive community service. and their most advanced AI system, capable of dismantling planetary networks in milliseconds, was currently experiencing an existential crisis. It was, without exaggeration, the single worst invasion in galactic history, and Earth still had not even acknowledged them as a legitimate threat. Zygar exhaled slowly, his massive chest rising and falling like a dying star. There had to be a way to defeat this bureaucratic nightmare. No one responded, because no one had an answer. The silence stretched on and on, thick with the weight of unspoken horror. Finally, Admiral Gruss, a warrior who had served in countless campaigns and had once strangled, a warlord with his bare hands, cleared his throat hesitantly. "Sir," he said, his voice oddly small, "we may need to, reconsider our approach." Zygar turned his burning gaze upon him. "Reconsider?" he growled. Gruss hesitated, his usual bravado nowhere to be found. "Yes, sir. I mean, traditional warfare clearly isn't working. Our weapons don't function, our fleet is in planetary limbo, our troops are—" He swallowed. "Engaging in recreational knitting? And now Earth has extended an invitation to negotiate." A tense pause. "Perhaps, temporarily, of course. We should accept their diplomatic process." The bridge went still. A cold, unnatural silence filled the air. For a long time, Zygar said nothing. He simply stared at Gruss, his mandibles twitching slightly. It was the kind of look a predator gave before deciding whether to devour something whole or let it live. Then very, very softly, he said, "Admiral." Gruss straightened automatically. "Yes, sir?" "Are you suggesting," Zygar continued, his voice laced with deadly calm, "that the mighty Zarak Empire, the undisputed conquerors of the known galaxy, should fill out forms?" Gruss hesitated. Then, with the reluctance of a man stepping into an active minefield, he nodded. "Yes, sir." Zygar's fingers dug into his armrests. "I would rather eat my own war boots." Gruss cleared his throat. "Sir, that is an option. But I would advise against it." Zygar let out a slow, measured breath, his nostrils flaring. His gaze turned toward the holographic display of Earth, spinning serenely below them, completely undisturbed by their presence. It was maddening. There had to be a way. His mind raced, scanning centuries of war doctrine, millennia, of planetary subjugation, every method they had used to crush civilizations beneath their might. And then it hit him. Not a strategy, something far more dangerous. Not brute force, not an act of war. No. If the humans wanted bureaucracy, then Zygar would drown them in it. He stood abruptly, his massive frame casting a looming shadow over the bridge. Every officer snapped to attention, sensing the shift in energy. "We will accept their invitation," he declared, his voice thunderous, reverberating through the command deck. "But not because we submit. No, we will overwhelm them." His mandibles clicked as his gaze burned with cunning determination. "We will play their game, but on our terms." A murmur of uneasy agreement rippled through the bridge. This was certainly a strategy. Zygar's claws curled into fists. "Lieutenant," he bellowed. A young Zarak officer snapped to attention. "Sir!" "Compile every single diplomatic and legal document from the last 500 years of the Zarak Empire. I want permits. I want trade negotiations. I want environmental assessments, tax filings, insurance policies, military exemptions, and at least 50 pages of absolutely meaningless technical jargon." The lieutenant paled. "Sir, that's over 1 million documents. It will take hours to transmit." "I don't care how long it takes," Zygar roared. "I want every government office on Earth so buried in Zarak legalese that they never find their way out. They think they can drown us in red tape? We will smother them in it." The officer scrambled to comply, his fingers flying over his console. As he initiated the massive data transmission, Zygar turned back toward the view screen, his eyes blazing with determination. "You wanted diplomacy, Earth?" he muttered. "You're about to get it." Earth, United Nations Intergalactic Affairs Office, Karen Patel, diplomatic officer, rubbed her temples as she stared at her computer screen. She said, blinking. "What the hell?" Her assistant, Dave, glanced over. "What's up?" Karen turned her monitor toward him. A massive download bar was at 4% and still climbing. "It looks like..." She squinted at the text, then froze. "Oh, my God." Dave frowned. "What?" Karen's voice was flat with disbelief. "The Zygar just submitted over 1 million official diplomatic forms." Dave blinked. "That's excessive." "No, Dave, that's insane." She scrolled through the never-ending list of documents. "What even is half of this?" She read aloud. "Interstellar War Tax Exemption Request, Form 92B. Voluntary Fleet Inspection Waiver, Subsection 44, Clause 9. Declaration of Intent to Formally Declare Intentions." She clicked another. "Oh my God. This one is just blank. Pages." Dave let out a low whistle. "They're trying to out-bureaucracy us." Karen groaned, then sat up straighter. "Okay. You know what? Fine." She cracked her knuckles and pulled up the official United Nations Administrative Response System. Then, she did the unthinkable. She submitted a request for clarification. The computer beeped. "Thank you for your inquiry. Due to high processing volume, estimated response time is 7 to 9 months. Karen grinned. She turned to Dave. "Let's see how long their war machine lasts against our processing backlog." Dave chuckled. "You're evil." Karen smirked. "I work in administration, Dave. Of course I'm evil." Aboard the Eternal Subjugation, Zygar watched the screen, waiting for Earth's diplomatic response. A notification flashed. "Your submission has been received. Your request is currently being processed. Estimated response time, 7 to 9 months." The bridge fell silent. Zygar's eye twitched violently. Zygar stared, his breathing quickened. Something inside him broke. Slowly, quietly, he sank back into his command throne. For the first time in his life, the Supreme Overlord of the Zygar Empire felt something he had never known before. True despair. 30. Zygar Empire, undefeated in 1,000 battles, had finally met a foe it could not overcome. Not because of superior firepower, not because of advanced strategy, not because of technological dominance, but because of a relentless, all-consuming wall of bureaucracy, so thick and unyielding that even the most hardened warlords in Zygar history would have trembled before it. The indomitable Supreme Overlord Zygar sat at the head of his war table, staring blankly at the single most terrifying message he had ever received in his long, conquest-filled life. "Your request is currently being processed. Estimated response time, 7 to 9 months." His mind, once a fortress of tactical genius, was now a smoldering ruin of exhaustion. For weeks, the might of the Zygar Empire had been systematically ground down, not by war, not by battle, but by ceaseless administrative nonsense. Every single attempt to reassert dominance had collapsed into an infuriating bureaucratic dead end. His fleet still hung in orbit, unable to fire, unable to move, locked in place under the weight of millions in parking fines. His most advanced AI had resigned. His elite ground troops had openly refused to return to service, citing psychological wellness through recreational activities. And now, after submitting over 1 million legal forms in a desperate attempt to overwhelm Earth's bureaucracy, the Overlord himself had received the most devastating counterattack in galactic history, a deliberate administrative delay. To 9 months, Zygar, conqueror of worlds, had to sit in orbit and wait. His sanity teetered on the edge. The bridge of the Eternal Subjugation was eerily quiet. The War Council had stopped speaking. Generals sat hunched over their stations, staring blankly at flickering screens, their eyes dull and lifeless. Admiral GRS, once a titan of naval warfare, was now silently filling out Form 2060, request processing acceleration. Not because it would help, not because it would ever be approved, but because what else was there to do? The Zarok Empire was not just losing, it was fading, dying. Not in fire and fury, but in the slow, mind-numbing suffocation of bureaucratic defeat. Zygar exhaled, his breath ragged. We cannot go on like this. The words fell from his lips, barely a whisper of what they once were. No one responded. They all knew it was true. His clawed hands clenched the armrests of his throne as he made the unthinkable decision. Open a channel to Earth. The comms officer barely reacted. Too drained to feel shame, he silently tapped a button. A moment later, the view screen flickered to life. There, sitting on the other side, was Karen Patel, Diplomacy Officer of Earth. She looked relaxed. Too relaxed. She was drinking coffee. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't even mildly concerned. She simply smiled. "Oh, Supreme Overlord Zygar," she said, setting her coffee down. "I wasn't expecting your call." Her voice was light, almost amused. Zygar's soul curled in on itself. "No," he muttered. Karen took a slow, deliberate sip of her coffee. "Oh? Then how can I help you?" Zygar gritted his teeth, his mandibles twitching violently. "We wish to negotiate." Karen didn't even blink. "Of course," she said, smoothly. "We'd love to have you." Zygar's eye twitched. You would?" Karen smirked, lifting her coffee once more. "Oh, absolutely." Zygar felt something deep inside him die. "Oh, absolutely," Karen nodded, her expression warm and pleasant. "Earth is always open to diplomacy. We pride ourselves on peaceful conflict resolution." Zygar barely processed her words before she continued. "Now, before we begin, I just need you to fill out—" The Supreme Overlord of the Zarok Empire whimpered, actually, physically whimpered. Karen's smile turned sympathetic, almost pitying. "Oh, you're already broken, aren't you?" Zygar didn't even deny it. His mandibles twitched weakly. "Yes," he croaked. Karen gave a slow, understanding nod. "Would you like me to expedite the process?" Zygar nodded so fast his skull nearly snapped. "Okay," Karen chirped, clicking a few buttons. Zygar held his breath. Would they be forced into a humiliating peace treaty, banished from the galactic stage, subjected to crippling fines that would collapse the Zarok economy? Karen turned back to the screen, her tone cheerful. "Great news! Earth is willing to forgive all intergalactic fines and drop all charges against the Zarok Empire." Zygar's breath caught. Was this mercy? Karen's smile didn't fade. "In exchange, we only ask that you never attempt to invade us. Again." Zygar's hands clenched into fists. He wanted to resist, to fight, to assert dominance, but he couldn't. Because he never wanted to go through this nightmare again. "We accept?" Karen beamed. "Fantastic. Now, while we're here, would you like to sign a mutual trade agreement?" Zygar hesitated. "Trade agreement?" Karen nodded. "Oh, absolutely. Earth has a lot to offer. Our technology is incredibly efficient and, if I'm being honest, your military designs are, well, a little outdated." Admiral GRS's mandibles twitched. "Outdated?" Karen's smile never wavered. "Tell you what, I'll even throw in a free consultation on your fleet's power. Efficiency systems. I've seen your energy readouts. You're burning way too much fuel for basic operations." Zygar's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. He couldn't argue. Even he knew the Zarok fleet's inefficiencies were ridiculous. Karen leaned forward slightly. Come on, Overlord. You've already lost the war. You might as well win the economy. Zygar sat very still. Then, after a long pause, he whispered, Show me the trade deal. Karen beamed. Oh, you're going to love this. The Zarok fleet left Earth's orbit not in defeat, but in strategic economic partnership. When Zygar stepped off his warship onto his homeworld, he did so with a new title. No longer just Supreme Overlord. Now he was also Director of Intergalactic Trade. The War Council was adjusting. Admiral GRS retired, opened a coffee shop. General Zaral quit the military, started a knitting business. The elite berserkers? They now ran a galaxy-wide charity for the elderly. The Zarok Empire was never the same again. It was stronger. Not through war, but through diplomatic exhaustion. Earth had won, and it hadn't even tried.